3, 2, 1, action.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 6th meeting of the Croton-Harlan Union Free School District Board of Education. The opening of the meeting, item 1.1, call to order. Item 1. No, do I have to say the call to order?
So you did it.
I did. I'll get it. Item 1.2, the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1.3, approval of the agenda. Recommended action be resolved. The Board of Education hereby approves the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Moving into reports, the President's report. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank community members present in the room and for anyone watching at home, whether live or at a later time. Thank you also to anyone who has written the board or attended a session of Meet the BOE. As a reminder, members of the board are available in the rotunda before every meeting. Last week, I had the pleasure of meeting with Cecilia Gordon, the president of the Tarrytown BOE, to answer questions about our Meet the BOE sessions. It's exciting to hear that something we started discussing as an idea in one of our communications committee meetings is now serving as a model for other boards in the region. Thank you to my fellow trustees for the work you are doing in your various committees and attending community events. I look forward to hearing about that at the close of our meeting during the board reports. So many wonderful things are happening in our district right now. I was able to connect with building level administrators and PTAs and have so many wonderful positive things to report. I, along with trustees Batnagar, Carrier, and Haber, were able to attend the opening of the Family Resource Center at CET, housed in the new Tiger Den. Assistant Superintendent DePaul was able to provide me with some information regarding the center. Foremost, that the center is open and welcome to all families with the goal of enhancing student well-being and supporting academic success by ensuring families have the tools and assistance they need to help their children thrive. I know Rachel will be presenting at our next work session, and I don't want to steal her thunder, but some of the services offered include technology access and digital navigation support, future workshops on parenting, financial literacy and wellness, and partnering with local organizations such as Croton Caring and providing essentials. I know in speaking to Superintendent Walker, the FRC is an approach to centralizing access to resources and community supports that our district has been prioritizing for the past few years, including through the recent community liaison and social worker. It's wonderful the district was able to do this within the existing budget and move the work that was already underway into the new space at CET, which provides a welcoming school environment for families and begins a connection between the school and our young families. Just a reminder, meetings at the FRC are by appointment only, and all protocols for entry into CET are still in place. Also at CET, today the Kindness Club, led by Marlena Horton and Anna Maria Stratner, invited veterans from the community to their annual Veterans Day celebration. This has become an annual school-wide event where, in advance of the holiday next week, veterans, oftentimes relatives of students, are celebrated for their service. At PBC, parent-teacher conferences wrapped up this week, student council elections were shared, and Halloween was festive, with spooky read-alouds and boo tastings. Acting Principal Kelly shared there was lots of collaboration and co-teaching. At CHUFSD, students are preparing for their first production in the renovated auditorium on Friday, November 14th, Saturday, November 15th at 7 p.m., and on Sunday, November 16th at 2 p.m. Students will present all in timing. A parent square with links to purchase tickets went out today, so break a leg to everyone there involved. The high school PTSA organized a mock ACT exam, which was well attended by more than 40 students. CHHS recently hosted visiting students from Germany. Alison Rhodes, French Madame Rhodes, was contacted by the organization thanks to her reputation for running the very successful La Rochelle Exchange. Thank you to all the families in our community who hosted those students. CHHS also hosted visiting teachers from, and I know I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, Jiangping High School in China this week. The same group has partnered with the high school for many years. And the next trip for our students to China is already in the works. Also, please mark your calendars as the high school counseling department is hosting their annual college symposium on November 19th at 6:30 p.m. This is for non-applying students, so it's freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. Workshop topics will include, and parents workshop topics will include a behind-the-scenes look at application review and finding the right college, all led by admission representatives. From athletics, very exciting news, our boys varsity volleyball team has earned the #1 seed and will take on Somers in the Section 1 quarterfinals this Friday at 4:30 p.m. in the CHHS main gym. All winter sports for all levels will begin on November 17th, and I was very proud to be there when our girls JV volleyball team took first place at the Panis Panthers Invitational on Saturday, October 25th. They won 27-25 in the second set, which was amazing. They came from behind, and their win was featured in the Gazette last week. The next meeting of the high school PTSA is December 9th at 6:30. Thank you to the PTSA for hosting the faculty lunch this week at CHHS. They will also be hosting a breakfast on November 24th for the Hall of Distinguished Graduate ceremony. And they are also selling new and improved Tiger gear. The order forms are available online. PTA's next meeting is November 17th at 7 p.m. in the PVC Library, where they will be planning for upcoming events in 2026, including the return of the student dance on January 23rd, and a parents' night out collaboration with the high school for some time in March. The CET PTA will wrap up book fair tomorrow and is hosting a movie night tomorrow night, weather permitting. I know that Trustee Butler updated us on SEPTA last week, but as a reminder that their next meeting will be on November 12th at CHHS at 7 p.m. Assistant Superintendent Rachel DePaul will be there. I want to also wish Chef a successful dine-around this Saturday and say thank you to everyone attending, especially to the families hosting. This is such a great community event and fundraiser for Chef, who does so much to support our schools and students. And last but not least, the boosters have been very busy this fall supporting our student athletes. Their next big event is the Macomb Memorial Basketball Classic. It is slightly different this year as both boys and girls JV and varsity basketball will each play one game on Saturday, December 13th. This is a great event to honor the Macomb family who often attend the event. They are asking for strong community attendance to show support for the family as well as highlight our student athletes who continue this tradition. As I said at the beginning, lots of great things happening in our schools supporting our students, and that concludes my president's report. We will now move into one of two hearings of the public. I just knocked that over. If you would like to address the board, please step to the podium, say your name and your address. Thank you, Greg. I'm so sorry.
Am I good here? All right, thank you. Good evening, members of the board, superintendent, and community. My name is Jeff Hirsch. I live at 30 Beekman Avenue here in Croton. I'm a high school guidance counselor in Westchester County and a proud Croton parent. My daughter is in 7th grade at PVC, and my son is in 4th grade at CET. I helped launch Croton's chapter of Wait Until 8th, a national movement that encourages families to delay giving children smartphones until at least the end of 8th grade. As a counselor and a proud NICET member, I was encouraged by my union's strong support of Governor Hochul's distraction-free schools law. New York now leads the nation with a statewide bell-to-bell restriction on unsanctioned smartphone use in K through 12 schools. The law is clear: no personal devices during the school day, including lunch, study hall, and passing time. I appreciate the thoughtful work Croton Harmon has done to begin aligning with this law. At the same time, I'd like to raise a few concerns about implementation, particularly around open spaces and cafeteria use at the high school. The current policy allows smartphone use in the cafeteria with staff approval, which appears to conflict with the law's definition of school day and school grounds. The legislation applies to all areas within the school property boundary, and cafeteria use is not considered a sanctioned educational purpose under the law. I'm proud to say that at my school, a large open campus for juniors and seniors, enforcing the policy throughout our school building and grounds bell to bell is our policy. I hear the concern that the more restrictive policy might encourage students to leave campus during free periods, and I truly appreciate the desire to foster a welcoming, inclusive school culture. However, I believe we can uphold both community values and legal compliance at the same time. Prioritizing student well-being and minimizing digital distractions is not at odds with building a strong school community. It's foundational to it. I want to also respectfully share concerns about the recent presentation by a technology expert to district stakeholders. While I appreciate the effort of bringing diverse perspectives, some of the messaging seem to downplay well-established research. For example, the claim that violent video games don't increase aggression, the suggestion that devices are only somewhat designed to distract, and equating digital achievement in Minecraft with real-world accomplishments. These messages may unintentionally undermine the goals of a distraction-free school law and the broader efforts to support healthy development. As a parent and educator, I believe we're moving in the right direction, I really do. But we need to continue our collaboration and clear action to ensure full alignment with the law and to protect our children's attention, emotional health, and social development. Let's continue to work together to make our schools distraction-free. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us tonight. Brought some friends with me tonight to talk about universal pre-K here in Croton.
Just, I'm sorry.
Sorry, yes, Jacob Day, 9 Wood Road here in Croton. I want to thank some of the board members who've spoken to me about this issue offline and given me some information about what the current efforts are with universal pre-K in Croton. I'm the father of 2 young boys, one currently in pre-K and another who will need it in 2 years. I'm here tonight representing many other concerned parents to advocate for a $257,600 annual investment to preserve our 56 universal pre-K seats. Without district support, this program cannot be sustained, and 56 children and their families will lose education to pre-K entirely. This represents just 0.44% of our $58 million budget. This is less than we spend on public information, on legal services, and other things. The question before you is simple. Will Croton Harmon invest in our youngest learners or walk away from the families who need us most? We know that the state gives us $5,400 per student. We know that a portion of that goes to an administrative fee to the school district. The rest goes to our provider, about $4,800 per pupil per year. And we know just from research and from talking that it costs more, closer to about $10,000 per pupil per student per year to support this. So this gap between the $4,600 that's missing times the 56 seats comes to $257,600. Again, a very small amount from our budget. Last year's budget increased by $2.1 million. So what we're asking for is only 11.7% of that $2 million increase, about 10%. This is really about equity for our children. Our own budget says centering equity in our work by providing support services to meet the unique needs of every student and family is part of our mission. And I think we can all agree with that. Pre-K really is school. And I think that what's happening across the state, across many districts, school districts are just walking away from the pre-K commitment because the money's not there from the state. We know that the state hasn't adjusted the $5,400 level for a really long time, and I just don't think we can count on them to do that. Pre-K in Croton has only been around for 4 or 5 years, and we know just from learning and talking to our providers that they simply can't sustain this funding shortfall. So the question is, are we going to stand up for our pre-K students as a district and make sure universal pre-K stays in Croton for as long as we can? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Greg Eisman. I live at 168 Maple Street. I too have 2 children. One of them is in kindergarten at CET, and one of them is 1 year old. And I look forward to sending him to pre-K, and I hope that it is available when he gets the right age. Thanks. He's made it up. I work with a 56 exam. I have.
Excuse me, just, I didn't get the last name.
Oh, NADO, N-A-D-E-A.
Thank you.
My son is 4 years old, and he's at EPK at Children's Space North. I was mentioning this to a couple of board members earlier, but he's having the most incredible time there. It's actually his third school in 3 years. And the care that they put into the curriculum and education, the welcoming environment has been just really incredible. It's grown so much even in the last few months. So, you know, they don't have a lot of resources, but they're still making it work what they have. I know that they are constantly looking for donations for things like, you know, wipes and diapers and things like that. And it seems a little bit unfair that they have to kind of canvas for these so high when they're doing such a good job for our students. And as Jake said, the money seems to be there. I have a 2-year-old daughter who I'm hoping will also go to UPK. She is at Circle School right now, and we're really excited for her as well. So I'm thinking about it for future students, but also for my daughter. So I hope you'll consider this. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Are you hearing the public? Thank you. I'd just like to know, we don't usually engage or respond immediately, but if there's anything that we have to add, we can do that. We'll do it via email, we'll contact you, okay? So thank you for coming. Moving into item 2.3, I will turn it over to Superintendent Walker for his superintendent's report.
Thank you, Anna. Good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking CET Principal Carrie Bianchi for being here this evening. We're going to spend a little while talking about some really fantastic CET data and the reflection of some really phenomenal work that's occurred under her leadership over the past few years. So thank you for being here, Carrie, for engaging in this conversation. I think we all recognize that almost regardless of what industry we're in, there are multiple approaches to take when you're trying to improve the performance, the work of a system. In our schools, about 3 years or so ago, a group of leaders from throughout the school community came together to create the Vision Map, which is our district's mechanism to try to inspire systemic improvement and success for all students. And through the work of creating and implementing the Vision Map, we identified 3 foundational elements of the Croton Harmon Schools experience. And you see those on this second slide right there. Those 3 elements, I believe, are the hallmark of what makes our district special. An innovative, genuinely innovative professional culture that encourages faculty to take thoughtful risks on behalf of new and better ways to educate and inspire our students. Genuine interdisciplinary learning across the system, and uplifting and inspiring faculty to faculty. We would call it elbow-to-elbow collaboration with the professionals in the system. And it's our firm belief as leaders in our system that when you create schools which exemplify these foundational principles, student achievement, as measured in many ways, is a result of our students' experiences in those inspiring schools. And so tonight, let's take a few minutes to begin to take a look at some of the measurable outcomes that our students have achieved over the past few years, beginning tonight with ELA, English Language Arts, at CET. So this slide shows student proficiency percentages on the New York State English Language Arts Assessment in grades 3 and 4 going back to 2012, 2013, which I think is actually when Carrie started at CET. Scores for the community's understanding of 3 or 4 on these assessments demonstrate proficiency, meaning that those students are meeting or exceeding the state standards for that grade level. And to me, I think a couple of things stand out about the information on this slide. First, the steady increase in proficiency over the past 3 years. And second, that the proficiency percentages for grades 3 and 4 at CET this past spring, the spring of 2025, are the highest that they've been in our district in well over a decade, and probably longer than that, just about as far as we could find digitally in terms of some record keeping. This slide shows the average proficiency percentages when we combine students in grades 3 and 4 in a particular school year. And so again, I think what's noteworthy here is the increase over the past 3 years, which is clear from the chart, and the fact that the current percentage, 75% average proficiency, is the highest in the district, again, in many, many years. This slide expands our view a bit and looks at proficiency percentages in ELA for all students in grades 3 through 8, both as individual grade levels and as overall average proficiency percentages by year. And so here you see that overall average proficiency in grades 3 through 8 depicted in graph form. And again, the trajectory of improvement, I think, becomes readily apparent. This slide zooms in on grades 3 and 4 ELA proficiency at CET over the past 4 years. Again, the trajectory of growth there apparent. I think what else is really noteworthy is that when you look at the third grade cohorts year after year, those cohorts' proficiency percentages get better between third and fourth grade every year. So this isn't about one specific group of kids who happen to be academically gifted in the area of English language arts. This to me is evidence of a system that is improving the performance of students year over year regardless of the cohort. We also recognize that amongst all of this clearly terrific progress, we exist in a region within Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES that boasts some incredibly high-performing school districts. And so this slide is one way of looking at our students' progress relative to the 18 districts in the region. I think what I note here is that our regional positioning among those districts, 6th in grade 4 ELA, 7th in grade 3 ELA, is also better than it's been in several years, reflecting the idea that we've been able to leapfrog the performance of students in other districts in terms of the ranking of proficiency. This one to me is, the next one is particularly interesting because it's taking another lens into progress relative to the rest of the region. So this shows all of the district in PNW BOCES by name and the aggregate percentage increase in proficiency comparing 2 years ago, 23-24, to last year, 24-25. And so you'll see that of all those 18 districts, our students' growth between those 2 years was second most in the entire region. And so in terms of what we can derive from this, I think here are some facts. ELA proficiency for 3rd and 4th grade and 3rd through 8th grade is the highest in our district in well over a decade. Increase in student proficiency in grades 3 and 4 was the second highest in the region last year. And we see a trend clearly of increased proficiency in grades 3 and 4 over the past 3 years. And we know, certainly, that when students achieve this kind of increased success, it doesn't happen by accident. And so I want to make sure that Carrie has an opportunity to talk a little bit about the phenomenal work that CET's been engaged in, and the district's been engaged in, to help our students find this kind of success. So Carrie, please feel free.
Thank you. I think it's really important to connect.
That way Greg can hear you.
Carrie, please feel free.
We're on. So I think the most important thing here is to connect this last slide with the first slide. So if you look at the first slide and you talk about our vision map and you talk about the things that we have done different in the last few years, you can't help but to think, okay, we're going to do these things, we've achieved this, but what exactly did we do? What specifically do we attribute this growth in our students? And we kind of sat together and thought of how can we make a graphic that is around student achievement, because that's what we're really looking at, but what things we have done and changed and even took a risk and trialed that really have led to these achievements. And it's a combination of, I'm going to start on the first part, the upper left side, instructional coaching. We've had our instructional coaches now for 4 years. The selection of those instructional coaches, the model that we use for instructional coaching, where they are still in the classroom and coaching, is a unique model. It has suited us extremely well. It has allowed those instructional coaches to stay in the classroom and continue their practice while serving as coaches for their colleagues, which is huge. We've done an astronomical amount of professional learning in the area of ELA. All of our primary teachers, as well as our ENL teachers and our AIS teachers, were all trained in the IMSE, multisensory approach to teaching reading, and that has made a tremendous difference. The first children that were exposed to that multisensory approach to reading are now in that 3rd and 4th grade range, so we're starting to see the positive impacts of that. We've really created a collaborative culture totally in line with the vision map. Students are collaborating more, teachers are collaborating more, and we've created an environment where our teachers are very comfortable taking risks. They're not afraid of what happens if I do this and it doesn't work. The tide has shifted and our teachers now say, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work, then can we sit down and talk about why it didn't work, what we need to do, how can we reflect, revisit, revise, and be successful. So that's a huge piece. We have been, our hiring practices, I mean, CET hired 8 new faculty members last year in the 23-24 school year. That shifts culture, and our hiring process has allowed us to really make sure we are selecting the very best individuals to come and be part of our CET family, and I think that's reflected in our students' achievements. Our teachers are empowered to try different things. It kind of connects to that thoughtful risk, but really allowing them to do things that drive them and therefore impact our students. You've heard about ITAD and our interdisciplinary experiences. That has been huge. Students are making connections between disciplines and trying different things and having unique experiences, and those unique experiences stick with them more than that rote, workbook or lesson or unit. These concepts are sticking with them, and I think that's huge. And one major important piece that I'm going to close with is our increase in support and AIS staff. As a philosophy at CET, we believe that if children's social and emotional needs are being met, they're comfortable in school, they want to be in school, they're going to be available for learning. If those needs are not being met, you could have the best lesson in the world and a child may not absorb it or be available for it. But since we've increased our support staff and our AIS staff, we are meeting those needs of our students, and therefore they're succeeding better than we thought they could. So we are very, very proud of the work that we're doing at CET. We could not be happier with the growth that we've seen, but we keep talking about, okay, what's next? How can we make that even better? We're not satisfied where we are, but how can we continue to show that growth? But we're on a really good trajectory. Very happy for the support from all of you and all of the teachers at CET, so thank you.
Before we go on to the rest of the report, I do have a couple of, observations or questions that I'd just like to raise. And I think if you go back to the slide that is, I think the 5th slide, district-wide proficiency, grades 3 to 8. What I notice and think about in terms of trend line, you'll see 2018-19, nothing for 19-20 because of COVID, nothing for 2021 because of COVID. But when we start with 22-23, or 21-22 rather, and we look at the same cohort year to year, which shows us that as over time is that group of students, and of course there's some that leave and more to come, but is that each group of students improving? And what I notice, if I look at the kids who were in 3rd grade, 21-22, 52%. When they went to 4th grade the next year, 61. A little blip down to 57 when they got to 5th grade, and 73 when they got to 6th grade. And going through each of those analyses for each of the grades, what you see overall is marked improvement, or certainly in some cases I'll say not regression, like in the 5th grade ELA 21-22, everything has been between 74 and 81%. And those variations are minor. My question is, when the work is being done to move forward, do you in CET, and does the district as a whole, take a look at the test results for the kids who have the 1s and 2s, and look at how we may not be meeting those students' needs and what we might do in terms of the instruction? And could you describe that a little bit so we know how that works?
And to your point, what we did recently is change our AIS model. So if you'll recall, a couple of years ago, we changed our entire AIS model because we did not feel like we were accurately meeting the needs as best we could. The resources that we have weren't being used as specific as we could have been. So now what we're doing for those 1s and 2s is we have AIS set up so that you can now have 3 days of AIS at tier 2. If you're not successful and you're not making gains at tier 2, we now have a solid level of tier 3, which would be an increased number of days going for support. We didn't have that in the past. Because of our part-time AIS, we did not have the room to have a solid, concrete tier 2 and tier 3 difference. When we noticed those kids weren't making the progress that we had hoped, that's one of the reasons we shifted our model. Now we have our new model in place, we're actually doing our groupings for AIS differently. Used to be that one AIS teacher would take, say, the kids from 3 classes, and the other AIS teacher would take the kids from 2 more classes in first grade, regardless of what those specific children needed. Now we do it differently. So there might be, take first grade, for example, you will have an AIS teacher that's taking kids who need assistance in this specific targeted skill. Doesn't matter who their teacher is. We have another AIS teacher that will take kids who need assistance in this specific skill. So not only have we increased our services and our model, but we've targeted the instruction to be able to better meet those children's needs so that they are getting exactly what they need to improve.
I would just point out to you the shift from grade 4 to grade 5, that decreased to 57%. It's also when in our district we switch buildings, and it's kind of it recovers the year after that. So I don't know if it's so new for them in PBC. I might think that.
I particularly liked this graph, for Neil, kind of what you were talking about. When you look on the diagonal,
That's the idea.
it's a very good picture of what we're talking about, those cohorts as the years go through, looking at it that way.
I will also point out that to some extent, the slide that Steve talked about, which is the aggregate change in proficiency, 23, 24 to 24, 25, it's only 1 year, but I think in part it could be a reflection of where some of those other schools were in some cases. You know, if they're already at 92%, they're not going to move much if they go to 94. But I think in looking at the listing of schools, what we know of them, there are a lot of different demographics, and so I think that probably is a good representation of our work. And you know, we always look for ways to celebrate and to quantify our work, because that's part of the process. But as long as we have the quality that we've just talked about, we would hope that you know, we will continue to see these kinds of growths.
One of the reports that I looked at individually was you can compare yourself to any district in the region specifically, or the whole region. And so we tried to look at schools that were similar demographically to our similar makeups, and compare not just scores specifically, but different types of questions, you know, like really drilling down into the ELA. And it showed that we had outperformed several schools in the region at a 1% gap. And I was like, well, let's see what happens if we make that gap higher, so you can change the gap. I went to 10%, and we still were in the green, outscoring similar demographic schools. And I'm like, well, let's just push this envelope even a little further. I went to a 15% gap, and specifically in the area of ELA questions around nonfiction text, we had outscored many of the similar schools by more than 15%. And that was, like, I kept moving that up and seeing how far can we push that. And it was really impressive to me that specifically in that area, we were well above many schools that are very similar to ours in that particular area.
Yeah, I think that,
Oh. Thank you. First off, congratulations. This is wonderful. And also really appreciate, you know, I'm a nerd about the data, love all the data and the quantitative numbers, and just encouraged to see more of that, even about maybe not our best stories, you know, just so we can have discussions about it. So just want to congratulate that. And also good to hear about, you know, all the work that's being done. And as you wrapped up speaking, you were like, what's next? And you know, when we go back to like the chart of the student achievement, one of the things that I was reflecting on now that my kids are older is like that partnership from the home. If not every home is able to do it, but you know, like how are you reinforcing some of what's happening in the classroom at the home? And so it seems to me part of what you're focusing on this year is doing work in the literacy committee. It's about, you talked about doing more involvement with parents and the community. So to me, like, you know, like I'm always thinking about continuous improvement and celebrate what you have, but it seems to me like one of the things next might be, and you're already thinking about it, what is the partnership with the home? Yeah, so.
Got a draft survey ready to go after the holidays.
Everybody
for that
needs a little
exact
rest, yeah.
For that exact purpose.
Yeah, thank you.
I just want to mention, I think one of the really important takeaways for us internally, and I hope for the community, is that you can see this sort of improvement in a system without resorting to the rote drill and kill, test prep mechanisms that have been part of so many systems for so long. And you can see this kind of improvement in a system that values those things, that values teacher creativity, student inspiration, school being genuinely enjoyable places to work and to be, and still see that kind of phenomenal improvement. You know, obviously internally, we have discussions around data all the time. Right? There is always a method to the madness, right? Whether the community understands it all the time or not. To not talk about data publicly for as long as we haven't was a strategic decision. Right? Because the plan was that it allows teachers to say, you know what, the system isn't solely about driving test scores up. Right? And so they mean what they say when they say to us, we want you to take some thoughtful risks, we want you to try some things you haven't tried before, because these are things that you genuinely believe as a professional will make school better for kids. And then at a certain point when we allow that to happen and develop the culture to the place where it is now, then we say, okay, let's take a look at our report card, right? How are our students responding to these things, right? Beyond, again, these are important metrics, right? We also know there's a bigger conversation around what success in school means, but these are, by and large, the metrics that folks in our community grew up with, right, and understand, right? So to Allison's point, it's important that we have conversations around these publicly, I think especially now, when you think about when you make changes in 22, 23, it takes time to see the results of those things. And so we feel like we're at a place now where let's share how we're doing. Right? So the next meeting it'll be PVC, and then it'll be the high school, and we'll just keep rotating through, looking at different aspects of the data. Not all of it, I'm sure, is going to be this profoundly good, but it just means we have more work to do, regardless of what it is. But to Carrie, to Craig, to the entire CET school district community, we've been around a lot of systems. This kind of year-over-year improvement, incredibly rare. So, outstanding job.
And I would be remiss if I didn't really say our teachers have embraced this, and they are allowing things to happen, and they are getting comfortable with looking at things differently. But when I was able to call our 3rd grade and 4th grade teachers together one Friday afternoon, they all came in and they were a little like, well, why is she meeting with us on a Friday afternoon? And I was able to share that. They were not surprised, but ecstatic at the same time. They were like, well, we know that we're getting through with our kids. We see the progress, we see the growth day to day, but it was so nice to see those numbers that you were, you know, and see it that way. So that was a really happy day for me to be able to call teachers in and have that conversation and thank them for everything that they're doing. And it really is a thank that should be extended all the way down to kindergarten, because it's not a 3rd and 4th grade test, it's a K through 4 test, and they really are preparing our kids well, and it makes me very proud.
I was at to the great extent that a lot of this has to do with changes in staffing and budgetary support. The board has heard about all of these things, right, for years, from Carrie, from Craig, from folks around this table. So congratulations and thank you to the board for your vision, your leadership, your support.
Yeah.
It's paying off.
And I just want to add one thing that I think I'm really pleased and proud about. And that is, unlike perhaps many other districts, when we have made the concerted effort and commitment to treat our faculty and staff as professionals and colleagues, they will rise to that occasion, and in our district, they have risen to that occasion, and that, I think, is one of the things. And I know the hiring of people who are supportive of the vision and approach is important, but the fact that we say, you're a partner, we don't tell you what to do, means that I think it redounds to the benefit of our students and our community.
I mean, at the risk of sounding redundant, I just want to say congratulations again to you and Craig, who I know wanted to be here with his dad. A huge thank you to all of the teachers for all of their effort. And I do just want to point out that these last 3 years, we've had the gift of having you and Craig leading that building. So I don't think it's a coincidence that that happened under your leadership and your commitment to the vision map and to all of this work.
Thank you for that.
So I hope you are, soaking this moment in amongst the many other moments that you will have this year, but certainly I hope this is a highlight for everyone.
It really is with great pride to be here, so thank you very, very much, and for your continued support. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Carrie.
Only one more slide for me, shifting gears a bit. We shared a community update yesterday, and just wanted to reiterate that I think we would all agree that one of the special things about getting a chance to live or work in this community is the way that this community comes together to support each other. And with some uncertainty around federal budget negotiations and the resulting uncertainty around SNAP benefits, understand that's a conversation that's changing rapidly. We know that there are a lot of families in our community that are experiencing food uncertainty on a regular basis, and certainly now more than ever. So we wanted to take a moment just to share some of the resources that are available in our community through the Corporate Curtin Food Pantry, through our tremendous partners in Curtin Caring and others, and make sure that the community has an understanding that those resources are out there, as well as an opportunity to share how our Family Resource Center can be a wonderful partner for families in accessing some of this information, and just to share a reminder that the state of the federal budget negotiations has no impact on the ability of our students to continue to access free breakfast and free lunch every day. So we've already heard from some families who, in response to yesterday's community update, with appreciation and with some questions. And so we encourage the continued engagement. I want to thank Denise and Rachel, Eva, Carmen, everyone who's involved in connecting with our families and making sure that they have access to everything that they need all the time. So, thank you. It's a very great report. That's it for me.
Before moving on, I just want to ask a question and say thank you so much for putting this together. It's wonderful data to share. I'm sure it's something definitely to celebrate. Now that we've shown the ELA data, are there plans before moving on to PVC in the high school to also share some of the math data in kind of a similar format?
Yeah, we're thinking through what the next step is. Do we want to look at math, CET, and more broadly, do we want to look at ELA, kind of a continued strand? So we're having conversations around what makes the most sense and what data is most readily available right now. But it's all there, so it's just a matter of what we want to share next.
Yeah.
But I think probably we'll continue the ELA strand up through PVC and then take a look at the high school and then circle back into math.
I just wanted to chime in and add to that. And I'm sorry that Carrie left, but I think something that she said sort of stood out for me on this too, which is, we're having a moment where we're sort of recognizing the work of both like the professional development and the instructional coaching and all these elements that have been part of the practice in this district for the last couple of years, to see them all come to fruition. And what I really liked about what she said is, I think, she didn't say it quite so explicitly, but it's like there's a sense of among our teachers is like, we're doing this because we know that it's going to work, and so that feels good. But I think for the larger community and for them as well, when you have that feeling of like this is going towards a desired outcome, to get the numbers behind it also is meaningful. And so I also just want to extend my appreciation for the way that you all put this together, because I think there's so many ways to tell the same story, and different people come to an understanding of what's going on via different vehicles. So it's really helpful to sort of be able to share the anecdotal and sort of like the color of the story and the numbers as well. So thank you.
I want to thank Ellen and John and others who were part of that. We're geeks for this stuff. We love this. So we've had any number of meetings just sitting around different data tables and thinking about how best to communicate this message from a number of different angles. So the next step now is to figure out how to best share it in a digestible way for the broader community. But we want to bring it, of course, to this team first. But starting hopefully early next week, it'll be in the broader community as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that was your best superintendent's report ever.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Moving into item 2.4, the student ex officio trustees report. Our student ex officio, Philomena DeMarco, is not here tonight. She is very happily celebrating with the field hockey team at their end of season celebration. She said she would be silly to be here, and I insisted she not do that. So I hope Phil is having a great time, and we'll get an update from her at our next meeting. Moving into item 3.1, new business, item 3.1, we have a discussion of policies for first reading. I will turn it over to Policy Committee Chair Extraordinaire, Neil Haber.
Don't swallow my head. So we have on the agenda 5 different policies, or actually 4 policies and an exhibit. I'm just going to very briefly kind of describe each of them, where they're coming from, what they deal with, and then I think it would be appropriate if anyone has any comments or questions on any of the policies that are in front of us, to talk about them, let us know. And Policy Committee, so I don't have to do a report later, we'll be meeting on the 18th of November, at which point we will talk about it.
Yeah, and I was just to project, with respect to my fellow trustees who have had private conversations with Neil about them, if you wanted to surface those same concerns here so that your fellow trustees and the public would certainly know what the discussion, like how we arrived at the discussion. Do you work with the board and public? Please.
So, the first policy is our policy on media relations. That's a policy that has been in place, last revised in 2012. One of the things that you'll note is that the changes that are in the red line changes in the document itself relate to some, I'll call it wording language changes on page 1, setting forth a specific time period when media activities, where members of the media may wish to come into the schools, should, not necessarily have to, but should get advance approval prior, at least 3 days prior to the date when that member of the media desires to enter the school for that purpose, so that arrangements can be made. Our policy now doesn't say that, so we could have a situation in which a media member says, well, I want to come in and see this in an hour, and we just cannot reasonably accommodate. I will add that, as you can see, the policy does say that those, and has always said that those events that are open to the public, any member of the media can come, But if there are special arrangements that need to be made, such as a television station wants to set up cameras because they want to take part of the game, they have to arrange that in advance so that, in that case, with the athletic director, so they don't, they know where they're being placed and so on. Similarly, if we, at school play next week, if somebody wished to record, obviously they could, but if they say, I want to set up my, my tripod with my camera, yes, you have to do that, arrange that in advance because you don't want to be in a place that might disrupt, might be unsafe or disrupt the actors or disrupt the audience. We've also suggested that we specifically say in the policy that that the member of the media has a condition for being granted permission to attend a school activity or event that is not open to the public, that they may not photograph or record by audio or video a student activity, or a student performance, with the exception of group photographs or recordings in which students appear as a group and cannot be personally identified. And the principal must inform the member of the media, identify to the member of the media those students for whom consent to appear has been withheld. Our concern, committee's concern, was if we have a situation where someone is coming into the school as a member of the media, not open to the public, because if you're in a play or you're in a sport, you have consented to have people look at you, take a picture, identify you, etc. But in other situations, like classroom visit or whatever, we want to protect the privacy of students, particularly those students whose parents have expressed a desire that those students not be identified. And we know that policy also relates, and we're not changing this, to media activities of the district itself. And we already have policy in place, which we need to make sure that we follow, of course, that we will not identify, either by photo or by name, any student whose parent has opted out. All with that being said, the policy also says if the member of the media violates this policy, we will have the right to say you may not be allowed to come into the building in the future for a non-public event because you basically violated the trust. Now, I will say that there were comments that were provided by a couple of board members, and there may be others that people have during this discussion. The first, with regard to, and this is just for everybody to know, and then we can talk about it and go back to committee, is the question of, in the second line, it says print and electronic. We invite participation of members of the media, of all forms of media, print or electronic. And the question was, electronic is a word circa 2012. 2012, we didn't have a lot of things we have now, and it was suggested perhaps that should be digital rather than electronic, and that seems to make sense to me. And that's certainly what we will consider when we discuss this. The second item that was mentioned is a question regarding and this is not necessarily the order, question regarding the withholding of consent when somebody files, I do not want my child to appear in school district media. the policy has said, since at least 2012, that this withholding of consent that might be signed by a parent will apply both to the district and to PTAs and to chef and to booster clubs and to, and it doesn't say, but will be added, other extracurricular support organizations, as we provide for in policy 1222. Question was raised, how is that communicated? How do they know? How will they, and that's, not for a public thing. If the PTAs have, if a PTA has a program on a Friday night and it invites everybody, invites all the parents and the whole community can come, that's a public thing and we don't, that's not involved. That does not get implicated, but if the PTA, let's say, is running something in the CET library for kids and it's not open to the public, they have to know that if they are taking photos of kids, right, and they're putting it on their website, they have to make sure that they have found out that any student for whom a waiver or withholding consent has been filed. And that really is more, I think, operational and administrative, but I think that is something that we need just to be aware of.
Before you move on from that one
Yeah.
to the next one, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Is the intention of that one to refer to activities that take place on school grounds?
Yes.
Exclusively, right?
On school ground, right. So if the PTA has
Like a thing at Fasala?
a thing at Fasala or a thing at Sinastra,
Right.
this doesn't cover them. And you are right, that is something that needs to be added.
Thanks.
Just
Yeah,
to
fine.
interrupt you, just to go back to this idea of media, print and electronic. Was there any discussion regarding defining media?
Okay. There was no such discussion, but
I just feel like,
Yeah,
I feel like in a day and age where like somebody who runs a podcast could be considered a member of the media. Like, is there, what's
so
the
I
threshold?
guess I can, we're going to talk about this in committee and whether or not it is necessary to have that definition. But I can tell you from my own research, which I'll share with the committee, and I'm sharing it now, I guess, there's really no bright line definition of what is considered to be a member of the media. One place you could look.
You don't have a press card anymore, right?
Well, you don't have a press card, and to get into the legal weeds, some people are data nerds, and some people are legal nerds, policy nerds.
We know this about you.
Yes. I've researched it. One of the places you can look is the Reporter Shield Law, Civil Rights Law, Section 79H, which has not been amended for like 30 years in New York, and does not talk about digital media news or content providers. So on one hand, in New York, it could be said they don't have anything, any privilege, any right to be considered a reporter if you do a blog or a podcast or whatever, because you're not covered under that law. Other states have been more expansive in talking about the coverage of that kind of definition to include digital media, digital news content providers. Certainly, in looking at the, and this even came up most recently, or as an aside, when the rights of the Associated Press to be in the White House press pool, which they were kicked out, Well, actually, that's a little different issue, which I'll get to in a moment. But there are some cases out there that have talked about, not in New York, that have talked about digital news, digital content providers as being part of the media. But one of the things that's out there, and even in the cases that have been most expansive, is that the purpose, that what this person does is for the purpose of providing news or content. So if someone were to come and say, well, I post on Facebook or on Instagram or on X, and I post about issues, so I'm communicating about news, I'm a member of the media, that, from my understanding, would go far beyond what member of the media would be. The gray line is sort of somewhere in the middle, and a lot of it has to do with what is really the purpose of that person wanting to be there. The other thing that I will note, and this goes to the AP thing that I mentioned, is that this is talking about the subject of members of the media, however they are defined, being permitted to cover an event, okay, or permitted to, how we treat them. However, and the AP case deals with this, and other cases deal with this, there is no requirement under the law that a public official, that a member of the media has a First Amendment right to speak to and get answers from a public official. Okay. In 2006, I think it was, in Maryland, the governor said, you know what, Baltimore Sun, I don't like your newspaper, I don't like you, I'm just not going to talk to you. And they sued, and they said, well, I have a First Amendment right, freedom of the press, to get answers from the governor. And the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals said, no, they don't have to talk to you. They cannot discriminate against you, viewpoint discrimination in terms of allowing you to have access where everybody else has access. But, so that's really the end, and it's kind of not a bright line.
Yeah.
And one of the things...
Before you move on, I want to interject for a moment. My concern is obviously the vetting of somebody with a certain set of skills and a certain commitment to accuracy. But second, it's especially in light of what we've heard as a board are security concerns for members of the public, or for members of the community. A self-proclaimed media person would then have access to the schools.
Well, would have access to the schools for public events, because any member of the public does, and would have access for non-public events to the extent that they requested permission and permission was granted. Okay? But we go beyond that, we're probably going into issues that have much which are really involve more legal analysis than I would do.
Sure.
And so I don't think we go beyond that. I think one of the things that, just on your point on it, is that we probably in the committee will be discussing, among other things, do we want to be more specific in this policy to define a member of media? Does that kind of open up more questions than it does answers? And
well, you want to make the policy livable, right? Like
absolutely.
You're not updating it when the next form of media
right
comes up.
But realizing, as we said, that we hadn't looked at this in 13 years, and there were not blogs 13 years ago, and there's a lot of things that were not.
Right.
There was no X in this, right? Yeah, Allison.
So I had a question. I understand why the rationale behind putting in notification of 3 days. And so this might be a little bit silly, but I was wondering, I was thinking about are there scenarios, like legitimate scenarios, like for example, sports team wins a championship at the last minute, and kind of like thinking about the open meeting laws and that we're supposed to make announcements by a certain date, but sometimes there's an emergency thing and we have to make adjustments. So I was thinking about, like, say there's a happy situation, like volleyball, they make the playoffs, and then next day it's happening. Like, are there any exceptions for this, or maybe this like really never happens as a district, so it's not even worth addressing?
I think
In that instance, it would be a public.
It still would be typical.
Because if they're having a tournament then the next day.
Okay, so that would be the thing. Okay.
Yeah, and to the extent that, let us say, the volleyball team wins on Friday, and we're ranked first in the section, so the next game is going to be Saturday, right? The next game is going to be Saturday, and somehow News 12 says, you know what, now we want to come cover this because you guys are getting on the way to states. We would say, yeah, it's not, we want to advance notice, but we'll accommodate you because we know these things happen, and we want to be, forthcoming.
Well, it does say it should be.
Well, that says should be. Should be.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, and that should be is for, does not. Right, and the should be is not the written stone.
It does happen, though. I think, for example, the News 12 request to come and be at the high school on the first day of school, I don't think came 3 business days in advance, but, to your point, those are times when we want to be flexible on that time.
So,
Did you have other questions you want to bring up? Or?
well,
'Cause
I know you may have some questions. I'm just looking, one of the questions that was raised, and we need to consider this, and we'll be considering it, is we now have for the opt-out document, we say provide that each year, okay? And we will be thinking about how this works, can work in a practical sense if we were to say, if you have opted your child out, that opt-out follows your child year to year unless you change that.
Unless you opt back in.
Unless you opt back in, whether that makes sense. I know we have other kinds of opt-out provisions where you must opt out each year. Or you must file things certainly each year, like acceptable use contract and other things. So, and part of the concern, and I know this has been raised from a parental sense, we get the packet of stuff at the end of August.
We don't get a packet.
Or however it comes. It's a packet in some way. And we have to act on it, and some people don't act on it, and then you can have that period of time, or maybe forever, where, oh, I thought I opted my child out of this, or I thought I gave the approval to that, I did it a year ago, I thought it carried over, and we just need to think about how that can work in a way that administratively works well and, allows parents' desires to be respected.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was anything else that I wanted to bring up. I guess one question that had been asked, and I think it might have been Sarah, or maybe
Well, let Sarah ask her
Allison.
stuff.
I just want to know about how the third party, like the outside organizations, would be.
Yes, I did have that question.
Okay, so go ahead.
And I understand that wouldn't necessarily be a policy, but operationally, I do think it's important for
Can you
us to
explain,
consider
sorry, what the question
how,
is?
because of what he brought up earlier of like how the extracurricular
Oh,
sport
okay.
organizations,
Got it.
PTSAs, would
How
get
they
that
inform.
information.
Yeah.
So I did have a question there with regard to that. I also think we need to come up with some sort of a phrase or refer to that other policy as to what those organizations are, because they change over time. So,
Right.
We list them out here, but not completely. So.
Well, we list them because we do have, I guess, we have a specific policy on chef, as having them connected with us. We have a policy for PTAs. We have a policy for extracurricular support organizations, which makes reference to Booster Club. But we know, and I know we've talked about the possibility that there may be other support organizations or music, whatever, and we would revise this policy in the drafting to make sure that that's there.
The other question that I had with regard to the policy was, so if you look in about the middle of the paragraph on media coverage for student activities, it says, even if consent is withheld, a student may appear in group photographs or audio or video recordings in which individual students are not identified. And then in the third, so then in paragraph 2 after that, it says, in which students appear as a group and cannot be personally identified. Now, to me, those mean two different things.
Yes, and I'm just trying to find where the second thing is that you said. What's the beginning of the paragraph?
It is in the red line, in the part that was added. It's toward the end of that. It says,
Okay, I see.
like basically the
Yeah, I
last
see.
couple of sentences there. So to me, right, cannot be personally identified
Is different than
is
are.
different
Yes.
than are not identified.
Okay. Well, that's something we can talk about, because I think one of the questions does come up. If you were, well, as an aside, I guess, or as an example, at my older son's graduation, it was on the football field, and we were in the stands, and everybody, all the graduates were on the field, and I took my camera, and I put my telephoto lens on, and I found him, and I took his picture. So that, I suppose, meant I could identify him. I knew what he looked like. We will need to parse through that language.
Yeah.
What makes the most sense.
Yeah, that was just, I wanted to
Sure.
that would be something to go back to on committee. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, just to say on that for just 1 second.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent that somebody is saying they don't want their child's photograph represented, I'm thinking right now of like for safety concerns, for whatever those safety concerns are. That student in a group photograph that is published, regardless of whether or not their name is listed, could potentially put that student at risk. If they're identified the way that you are able to identify it without a name.
If the person looking at the photograph does know what that student who's safety is, but then that raises a whole other different question, operationally, which is if we take a photograph of
Right, you could potentially have a
100.
case where like an
Yeah.
entire senior class can never take a group photograph if it includes that
Well,
student.
right.
And then you're isolating that student by not
But
including them.
that's the challenge with this, with the policy, is that if you're
Correct.
opting out, that student actually can't be in any photographs. And that student has to be then like removed from the photograph or off to one side or not participate, because that
Well-
is not what the opt-out means, is that it's not that you're not identified, you're just not, your image is not published.
Well, our question there,
I think, I mean, that's
yeah,
the
and this is issue that we will have to talk about is, if you're in that situation, right, and you get a group photograph of 300 kids who are there, and maybe you could see someone's face, does that mean that you say, kid, you can't be in the crowd? Or does it mean that we will blur that kid's image before we publish the photographs so that we are, so that you can't, which happens sometimes? Or is that something where when we consider the non-identified nature of that image for that student, and in a group, as our policy currently says, that is something that is not going to substantially implicate issues of safety, and we as a board are comfortable with having that group photograph with the one very tiny image of your,
But the.
and I'm just saying this is,
Premise though,
I know.
that to say that it's like not identified because everything can be
And-
identified.
and I think our question really is,
Right.
we can't solve that
Right.
here at this table now, but we know that when we meet in 2
Right.
weeks,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to think about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly.
An image is PII.
It is,
Right.
correct.
So to the extent that we're saying, that I think what I'm hearing is preventing somebody from triangulating more than one piece of PII, right? Personal identifiable
Sure.
information. But an image in itself is.
Sure.
So to the extent that, I mean, I guess
Well,
not to add the complexifier, but I think the policy should try to at least address.
well, to them, because I think the other point is, if we have a data privacy PII obligation, which does not connect to a parent's withholding of consent for that release of PII, right? Then we have two other things. Maybe that means you can never do any photograph. Or maybe you look at our policy 5500, student records, which identifies directory information to include certain categories, and I believe it includes photographs. Parents have the right to opt out of the dissemination of that directory information, and if parents do not, then you presume that the photograph is there, and for the purpose of the parents, and they're opting out, if they are opt out of dissemination of directory information under 5500, and they opt out of withholding of consent to be in the media, then their image, the image of their child would have to be withheld because they opted out, and then we come back just to the question, if it's that group photo where they're not individually identified, just remember it's personally identifiable information. What does that mean when you're talking, a crowded city field? Yeah, I mean, but we will have to talk about that. And we may, just because we have these questions and it's appropriate to bring them up, I'm glad we had this, Carol Burnett said, I'm so glad we had this time together. We may not be back with this for second reading
For a while.
Yeah.
for a while because we need to work through. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just such a sticky situation because really anything is identifiable right now. I mean, with the AI tools and things like that, even in a crowd. So I don't think it would be honest to say that somebody cannot be identified because I don't think anybody here is, I think we're all intelligent, but I don't think any of us are like gurus in this kind of technology and know what's happening next. And I'm sure a lot of things are under the works. I mean, I think like, for me, some of this goes back to like, there's a lot of good reasons why we want to have like a lot of group community photos out there. It shows a lot of the wonderful things we're doing. It builds community. There's all these good reasons, but on the same token too, like Anna, what you were saying about how there's some people there's real safety concern. I do feel for any situation where there's any family at home that's telling a kid like you can't participate in this play or do this thing, because you are going to be photographed and that could put us in danger. So it is a really hard thing. And I mean, I would just say that maybe this is an opportunity to get feedback from the community on thinking about this, because I think it's complicated and there's going to be strong feelings about it. And maybe there's different ways we're not even thinking about it yet that might be helpful to, feed into a discussion on what's kind of the best balance forward. But I think this is a really helpful conversation.
Sarah, I was just thinking that maybe as part of the communications committee survey, we might include a question or two regarding all of this
Yeah, I think that would be
to get the community feedback.
Yeah. Did you have just a couple other things on this? I'm sorry. So I just wanted to clarify then, because then in paragraph 3, it does state that activities that are open to the public do not need that permission isn't required.
Correct.
Thus meaning that if a student who with consent has been withheld is participating in a play, in an athletic event, in something like that, their picture, this policy does not, or that withholding of consent isn't applicable.
That's correct,
Okay.
because anybody can show up, anybody can take picture. We can't restrict the media at a public event from taking photos and interviewing people and doing whatever, so it doesn't cover that.
And then does, I guess in the flip side to that, does the withholding of consent form clearly specify that as well? Or is that something we should consider making sure is very clear to the parent or
The
guardian?
current form, which has been around for many years, says at the end of the second paragraph, this does not include group photographs or audio or video recordings in which students appear in a group and cannot be personally identified. It's a discussion we've had.
Yep.
In addition, this does not include students who are participating in a performance or athletic event open to the public. Okay, and that is consistent, and whatever
And that is
form-
in 1130E, I'm sorry.
That's in 1130E, second paragraph at the end.
Getting all of my different things
Yeah.
confused here. Because I did have a small point.
And it
1130E.
does say, in the third paragraph, although it's covered a little bit, the withholding of consent applies to all student programs and events. Withholding, except performances and athletic events open to the public, right?
That was why, because yes, we had this conversation, because I was like, these seem contradictory, and it is because it was just the
Right,
way
because if you look at the way
red
it's printed
line is
out, where it
covering
says
the-
deleted, it says except for is or had better be.
Perfect. That was good. The only other thing that I wanted to mention on 1130E is a reference to the cable station at which we put things forth, which we've not done for some years now. We could probably get rid of that.
Well, I don't know. You could ask Brad. Wanna start?
Greg can confirm, we no longer.
No, I know we don't want to have
the
a cable
station,
station,
so-
but there is a different question that goes along with that. We do have, and we'll have to think about it, we do have the video production facility. We know they are producing content, and to the extent that they are producing content, like, interviews in the school with kids or whatever, that will be put out on social media, that will implicate, of course, our social media policy, 1140. But, we'd have to think about what they're doing, because I know they are hoping to do a lot of things.
That was all the questions, thank you. Staying on 1130, I just wanted to say, I looked, a couple of other districts also broke it out, do you give consent or not give consent, and said yearbook, they did a couple of different kind of buckets of the types of things and I thought that was particularly helpful, because somebody might be like, yeah, I'm okay with being in a yearbook, but I don't want to be my kid on Instagram. And it wasn't 5 things. I think it was 2 or 3 things that didn't seem like operationally it would be a huge complicated
I will
thing. Yeah.
say to you, Allison, you did send me a couple of policies of districts around here that have that. We can discuss that, because I think operationally it may or may not be easy to administer. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think we want to know those districts so we can reach out to them and
Yeah.
determine how operational.
And there may be other districts that are not, beyond the 2 that have also dealt with it. We can do some research as a committee. We can reach out to them, see how it's going to work, how it works, and then consider that.
I think also at some point maybe it would be helpful to the conversation to get a sense of how many students and do tend to be like opt out? Of course, the number can change over time, but you know, I think it's different if it's like 500 versus like 20. You know,
It's closer to 5 than 500.
Yeah, it, right,
Very, very.
we've been told very few,
Very, very.
half dozen, so.
You know, one thing that, like, I think this is still not reflected here, and I think if we are going to be looking at those possible, you know, like line items for opting out, which I think we hadn't quite gotten there last time we were in committee, was that same question about the difference between video images and specifically access to being interviewed. That is still a question for me.
Okay, well, I'm making a note that hopefully you'll take it up too.
No, I gotta have to figure out how to like articulate that better, because I still haven't since the last time we met. The context for this being that, like, if for instance, a parent elected not to opt out because to opt out would actually, you know, again, from my reading, could mean that your student cannot be in any group photographs because that is PII, and then their, you know, it's like their image is being taken. You know, there's for some parents, there's a difference between sort of that and giving permission for your child to speak to a member of the media without your knowing about it. Because there's no requirement here in the policy that the school has to notify parents that a member of the media is coming in, and that students will be made available potentially for to be interviewed. And you know, my personal experience was this actually happened to my kid in 2nd grade. I had no idea until I found out by a Google search of my own child that they were on the internet. And I don't have an opt-out, but I had no awareness that as a 2nd grader they had spoken to a member of the media. Again, that was, I don't know, like, is a science fair open to the public? It's really not. It's actually open to parents. Right. This was obviously a decade ago before everyone here was involved. But it's like, but those are the types of things that I think parents are going to have questions about as well. So I think, you know, looking at both the visual and then like the further interaction, there are just levels of what people are comfortable with, and it's hard to, it's going to be a challenge to figure out how a policy can adapt to those different levels of, you know, of people's concerns about their privacy.
Can I be back on what you had said? Because you had also, when you read the that's last paragraph on the opt-out, it said performance, sports, athletic and performances that are open to the public. But a school play is not open to the public, is it?
Sure.
Is it considered?
Sure, they sell tickets, and yeah, whether it's the PBC school play or the high school play, they advertise publicly, and hopefully we'll get people other than students and parents coming. Yeah.
Whereas something like, for example, like the science symposium, that's not necessarily advertised broadly to the public, but
The passion project is not.
Passion project is not open to the public.
traditionally during school hours have not been necessarily open to the
The-
public,
you know.
but things that are after school are sometimes more so. So
And I think with regard to Science Research Symposium,
right,
that is one where probably it would be good to have it open to the public so members of the public can see the great stuff our students are doing, but I don't know if that, you know, if that invitation is given to the public, and that's something that...
focus.
Okay. Just focusing on what people are saying. Anything else on this one?
That's the complexity of it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. But thank you to the policy committee for your work on this thus far.
Yeah, now we're
It's definitely a
going
sticky.
to do, now we're going to do the next one.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the next one, and these are in numerical order just because it's the easiest way to do it, is the policy on student privacy. And to make clear at the outset, this is a policy that we are required to have. It is a policy that does not deal with all aspects of student privacy. It really deals with only limited aspects of student privacy, mainly as required by the federal protection Pupil Privacy Rights Act, PPRA, and it also has some other things in it as well. There are privacy protections in various aspects, in various parts of our policies, including that to which we just discussed. Student records, 5500, that talks about student records that are collected, who they can be disseminated to. 8635, which talks about internet use and breach and so on. But this talks about a couple of policies that the law requires. The first is surveys. The federal statute that I just mentioned, the PPRA, says that and the regulations say that if a school district is going to be conducting a student survey that is going to ask questions about one of the 8 enumerated items that you see under the survey part of this policy, such as political affiliations of students or mental or psychological problems of students or their families and other things that are listed. If federal funds are going to be used for paying for that survey in whole or in part, the parents must opt in their children, or the student age 18 above has their own right to opt in to take that survey. If that survey is going to ask about one of these 8 categories, but is not funded with federal monies, the federal law says that it is at the discretion of the district whether participation will be mandatory unless somebody opts out, or you want to have the same rule that it will only be if you opt in. And that's for if you are requiring a student to take that survey. Any survey, whether it is federally funded or not, that is voluntary, there is no opt-in or opt-out requirement because the student, or the parent on behalf of the student, is saying, yeah, you can take it or not. So what the committee did was change to some extent the NISBA draft that kind of suggested policy to clearly delineate what happens when there's federal funds, what happens when there's not federal funds. The law also requires that if there is going to be a survey that asks about these things, the district must provide advance notice to the parents for students age 18 above of the administration of the survey and the general subjects of the survey, the categories of sensitive student information for which information is going to be gathered, whether it's mandatory or voluntary, and whether it's funded by federal funds so that you'll know whether it's opt-in or opt-out, and must give the opportunity to the parent to look at the survey so that they can decide, are we going to opt in if it's an opt-in, or are we going to opt out if it's an opt-out? And that information must be provided, even if it's not mandatory to participate. The information, we're going to do a survey. There's no bright line requirement as to the number of days that advance notice must be given. But as you'll see in that section, we are suggesting 15 school days, let's say 3 weeks, with the parents to make their desire, to come in, take a look, and then make their desire sufficiently in advance so that if this child is going to be opting out, we know they're going to be opting out. And so what we have suggested at state is that parents get notice, 5 school days after they get notice is the deadline to come in to tell the school principal, I want to see the survey. 5 days after that to come in and look at it. So the parent can then make a decision enough in advance so that the survey can be administered to those who are not opting out. So,
For purposes of brevity,
yep,
just
yep.
if you want to hit the highlights.
Hit the highlights after that. So that's what's in there, and keep in mind that is all not related to other areas of privacy other than these surveys. And it's administration's recommendation to the committee that for the surveys that are not going to use federal funds, if they fit this category, it should be an opt-out. I will also add, and as we have discussed in committee, that the student climate survey, right, does not ask any questions that fit with any of these 8 categories. So this does not apply to the student climate survey if at some point there was, needed to drill down on something like, let's say, drug use by kids, and that's what we were doing, then this would come into play. So we also deal with, in this policy, marketing, which we basically, as we are, says, it's kind of redundant or repetitive in a way, but it has to do with privacy. It says we are not going to use or disclose PII for marketing or commercial purposes, or sell that PII to anyone. When people aren't going to get that. Now we know that certain PII is shared in some manner with, like, the College Board, and
But that's individual student accounts.
right. So we know that that's what that paragraph, 2 paragraphs talk about. Media coverage of student activities is basically just a reiteration. For student privacy purposes, this stuff we talked about applies. Inspection of instructional material, which is a matter that comes in education law, is set forth here so that, once again, parents can have the right to come in to say, I want to see instructional material. The next item, invasive physical examinations. This is a matter specifically of state law that says, except for like an emergency situation, a school medical personnel, school physician or nurse, will not engage in any invasive physical exam without the parent's consent. Now, obviously, when we're talking about like sports physicals, parents have the right to have their sports physicals done by their child's pediatrician. But some parents may say, well, I don't have a pediatrician, so I'll have the school doctor do it, Dr. Muir, and I'm sorry, not Dr. Muir, a current school physician. And if so,
Dr. Muir.
it is Dr. Muir?
Yeah, it's still Dr. Muir.
So,
It was like weird.
okay. And so, that will, these rules will apply. The next about biometric identifying technology, including facial recognition. New York State technology law specifically states that schools may not use biometric identifying technology for staff or students, except as it relates to a specific authorization by law, which means we could not, for our time clocks for our employees, or for allowing student access, to use a fingerprint scan or facial recognition, like doing a TSA. And that's in the law, so this just codifies that. And the last thing is that we will notify each year, and that'll be part of the packet, which is not a packet anymore, this information so that people know what the privacy obligations are in this regard. I will say that we have reviewed this policy with counsel. So, and to the extent there's any concerns relating to legal issues, they've looked at it. So if there may be questions.
I'm just, to the extent that it references policy 5151, homeless children, I think that phrase is changed to unhoused.
Housing insecure.
Housing insecure, I mean, there's a more
Well,
humane way.
that is going to,
Right.
and I'll circle that because
I'll
really,
just bring it to your
really what
attention, there's been an evolution in terms of that term.
you're right. I don't know that NISBA has caught up with that.
Right, yeah.
But, yeah, we can certainly look at that and consider changing the name of that policy and then the references here and elsewhere. Yep.
So I had a question about when it comes to the part about the surveys, the language is that you have to like go to the district office. I understand like the idea of a parent having to request to access the to be able to see it, but I feel like if there's any way to provide a digital version or I don't know if there's a way to set up like even if it's an issue like it being public, like a Zoom appointment, a screen share, but to me, like if somebody can't come, it's like an access issue, or if they're, they're working childcare. So I think if there's a way to shift the language that it doesn't say that they have to physically, you can accommodate other ways of sharing it.
Yeah, we do now as a relates to the platform, for example.
That's good to know, thank you.
Okay, hold on just 1 second. Yeah, I'm just trying to find it.
Oh, no, thank you.
Go ahead, I'll just check it out.
I have my sweater chair. I have 2 minutes.
Can I ask, do you have cats at home?
Yes.
See, I'm super allergic, that's why I don't like just.
So you're sneezing now?
What?
So you're sneezing now? No.
My eyes would swell up, I wouldn't be able to read the agenda.
So stay away.
Thank you.
Anything else on 5500? Okay. Our next one is 6741, and that relates to contracting for professional services. Okay, we have had since 2009 a policy that, I think it's 2009, a policy consistent with section 104B of the General Municipal Law that sets forth alternatives to competitive bidding. That statute was adopted around that time, and what it basically provides is that when you have, if you're seeking professional services, you don't have to go through get the lowest bidder. That's why you go through an RFP process or an alternative to that, which we'll discuss in a moment, and the municipality, including school districts, are supposed to establish rules and procedures for the RFP process and the exceptions to that, which is what this policy does. What the policy said, as came from NISBA in 2009, and you'll see it in the top at the in the margin, the deleted language, it says professional services are defined as services requiring special skill and or training, quote, such as legal services, medical services, auditing services, property appraisals, or insurance, which leaves the impression that well, professional services are limited to those areas, and they are not under a number of state court decisions and commissioners' decisions, which you'll see in the references. It's broader than that. So I have suggested that the language conform to those cases to say, instead of such as, to say, and the exercise of intangibles such as judgment and discretion. Okay. So that's the first change. The second change right after that is that any policy, or rather any contract for professional services will be approved by the board, okay? Because our section 67, our policy 6700 says all contracts are supposed to be approved by the board, and in advance, except for emergency contracts as identified below. One of the things that we added, because of one request of one of the predecessors of our current assistant superintendents, this is language that I don't think any other district has, but we can have it within our procedures, that talks about exceptions to solicitations through the RFP. You'll see that towards the end, where we say, don't do it, you know, you don't have to go through an RFP if it's an emergency. We say you don't have to go through an RFP if you're going to, if the person to be engaged, the professional, possesses unique expertise, skills, or knowledge. If there's only one person that we can find around here who can do archaeological inspection, you know, we just go to them. And the last is, if it's really for such a small amount, that why are we going to use all this, you know, resources to go through an RFP process if it's only $2,000, for example, you know, just go hire somebody. But the policy as suggested is that if the emergency contract is a large contract, more than $10,000, a number that our administration has proposed, then we would approve in advance. It might call for a special meeting, emergency meeting, but you know, for a small emergency where, let's say, you need to get a hold of an engineer to do $3,000 or $8,000 worth of work to survey something because we have a water main break and we have to know what to do now, they'll go ahead and do it. As far as the last two paragraphs, which are suggested, is that where there's those emergency contracts, right, the board will be informed at the next meeting. The public will be informed. We entered into this contract. It was an emergency. This is why we had to do it. And then with respect to those contracts that are for someone with unique skills, or it's too minimal to go through an RFP, we say the policy, as we're suggesting it be changed, would say we'll approve, but we would like, along with that presentation, an explanation from administration why they did not do an RFP. This is the only person who really we could find to do this work, or the cost of doing the solicitation and doing the RFP wasn't worth it. And then so we would know that when we are allowing that exception to the requirement of an RFP.
So just for clarification on that point,
Sure.
Just so that we can all be clear that we're understanding it, what you mean there, or is it correct to interpret this to mean that if either item 2 or item 3 is like the qualification there, where it's either specific expertise or the amount is so minimal, that just means that the contract would come to us for approval anyway. It would be without an RFP.
Without an RFP, with an explanation as to why the administration felt an RFP was not
Was unnecessary.
necessary for one of the criteria that's set forth in 2 or 3.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And lastly, it's an update on the policy 9645, which is disclosure of wrongful conduct, i.e. whistleblower policy, because there were changes in the law that governs whistleblower, a law, section 75B of the Civil Service Law, that we are supposed to adopt and get into our policy so that those who may be whistleblowers within the meaning of, employees who whistleblow within the meaning of that statute, Civil Service Law, have the protections that the Civil Service Law provides, and we incorporate that into policy. So that's why you see all of these various changes. One thing to note is that, and this is a change in the law, it used to be that the whistleblower was required to report such believed wrongful conduct to the superintendent before they could go forward, or to the Board of Education, before they could move forward with any of their rights under the Civil Service Law. And the Civil Service Law was changed to say, you know what, you don't have to do that before you go to the government agency, wherever you may make a complaint, because you just might not feel comfortable raising it with the superintendent or the board, particularly if it could be critical of the superintendent or the board. We have added, or NISBA has suggested adding, more specific processes of how complaints will be investigated when they are made to the board or made to the superintendent, and the obligation to maintain records, and the obligation to maintain the confidentiality to the greatest extent possible of the employee, to the greatest extent possible, because sometimes you're going to have to reveal that in the course of the investigation, and the guarantee of no adverse action who has in good faith, against an employee who has in good faith notified the district or government body of wrongdoing, including those who are mandated reporters and are reporting something that they're required to do. So that is basically what's in here, and it's pretty much everything that NISBA has recommended and pretty much everything that conforms with Civil Service Law.
No questions?
Thank you for that very thorough explanation of these policies. No, I'm sure the public appreciates that.
Yeah, I think it's important that the public should understand that in the policy committee, when we talk about these, we go through these questions and issues, rely on administration to provide guidance, rely on legal to provide guidance, rely on NISBA to provide guidance, look at policies of other districts, and I know, as I mentioned, Allison mentioned some that will help inform us, so that that you know that work is being done. Our policy committee meetings are open to the public, but that is where we work, and then the product of our work, like the product of all our committees' work, come to the board for public consideration and discussion, as we've done tonight, and I think it's great that we're doing it.
Thank you, Trustee Batnagar and Trustee Oshiro and Trustee Haber for your hard work on that committee. And that will conclude our discussion of policies for first reading, moving into instructional personnel.
Oh, before you do, just one other thing. I know you didn't say very much on the last two policies. If there are any comments that anybody has, that they think of after that, let us know.
So moving into item 4.1, instructional personnel resignation. Recommended action be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of Isabella Zappa, mathematics teacher, Croton Harmon High School, effective November 30th, 2025.
So moved. Second. Not happy about it, but, I mean, I'm happy for her.
Yeah, on the question, I will just add that I have come around and I am also very happy for Isabella. We wish her well as she takes on her new position in Pearl River. She was an amazing assistant basketball coach and teacher, but I will always fondly remember her for her poker face during basketball games and her kindness to our student athletes in that element. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Moving into item 5.1, donations. Recommended action be resolved, the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation of $50 from the Croton Caring Committee as a contribution to the 6th grade class trip for 2 students at Pierre Van Cortlandt Middle School.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you so much to Croton Caring for always supporting our students and for all your work in the community. Moving into item 6, the consent agenda. Item 6.1, approval of the consent agenda. Recommended action be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby approves the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Second.
On the question,
Just give me 1 second.
let me know when.
No questions, but it's nice to see the breadth of change orders that mean we're coming to the end of our capital project.
We might have a few small ones that we're haggling over right now.
So, what I understand from information that the board has received is that we, to this point, have this entire project, Denise, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I hope I'm not wrong, has come in under the full budgeted
Oh my
amount.
God, why? Why? Knock on wood. It's not done yet.
No, I said to this point. I said to this point.
Correct.
Correct, okay. I said to this point. I know there's a few more things he's haggling on.
To this point.
That's all right. No.
She's got a plan for all of this. I don't think we need to worry about it, but I
Well,
guess.
I'm hoping there's a plan, and we'll talk about that in the future.
We are exploring options, yes.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. We will now move into our second hearing of the public. I will allow, I'll just inform our viewers at home that there is no one here for hearing of the public, so we will move into item 7.2, board reports. And we will start with advocacy.
Great. I don't really have an update, same as last week. We will be meeting on November 10th. I will note that the West Putz Advocacy Committee met and discussed the preliminary legislative priorities for the year. So that is something that we will be discussing in our meeting on the 10th, looking at what some of those draft priorities are, where those priorities fall for our district, if there are things that are missing, things we want to bring forward. So that'll be the crux of that conversation on the 10th. And then I will report back after.
Thank you. Audit.
Pass.
Pass.
Same report as last week.
It's a mere 7 days since
Right.
our last meeting. It's all here, at that time, so I don't have a report for board development either because we gave it last week.
Just one question. When is Board Development next meeting?
I don't have that in front of me, but I can send it to you.
Okay, well, you don't have to send it to me, just to...
Yeah, no, I don't have it in front of me. I was actually looking for it and I don't.
Communications.
So we did meet on Monday? Monday, yes, the 3rd. So we are still ongoing with our work for the BOE section at the website, so all of that work is still in progress. We will continue to keep the board updated as we move through that. We have, as well as contact persons and or liaisons from the board for each of our affiliated school groups. I think we've closed in on, we have liaisons or contact persons for each of those groups now, with the exception maybe of the newest booster club, the Champs. So, but I think we're moving along on that. We had a conversation about the upcoming budget communications calendar, and we also had a discussion about the work session recaps and kind of thinking through those so that we make sure that we are reflective of the full breadth of conversation that the board might have or questions that the board might have. And we discussed that this next recap from the October 30th work session would be largely, we would really kind of just point people to that portion of the video and just kind of let our conversation speak for itself rather than trying to encapsulate that into 1 or 2 points because it was such a robust discussion. But looking at ways that we can continue to evolve that and improve that product so that we make sure we're giving information to our to the community that is useful for them. And then we also discussed potentially putting together a survey for a communication survey for the community. So, lots of stuff going on. We'll keep everybody updated.
Neil, I have the answer to your question. The next board development meeting is December 4th.
Okay.
I'm not going to call policy again.
You don't think I have more to say? I can always have more to say, but I'm not going to.
And then we have liaison reports. If anyone has a liaison report that they'd like to, go ahead.
So I neglected last week, but I had attended the IDEA committee a couple weeks back, and this weekend on Saturday, November 8th, they're going to be holding at the Universal Unitarian Church a documentary called I believe it's called The Arrivals. They're going to have panelists with the filmmaker. It sounds like it's a good community event. I believe they've been sharing details online, but just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving into item 7.
No, before you do.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Student Faculty Congress met on...
Did you report on that last week?
That's a question.
You did.
You did.
I did, okay.
Yeah, because Philomena was still here.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
I hadn't recalled. Go ahead.
I did have just a quick thing for polling. So Neil and I were able to attend the community conversation also on Monday, November 3rd. Everyone got that recap of that conversation in your email. It's called Crux of the Conversation is that email that comes through. So take a look. We had a good, robust conversation about board conflict and where there is conflict in that it's a robust discussion at the board table versus disruptions at a board table, and also in ways that we can engage with the community as well. So it was a good meeting. So I would encourage everybody to take a look at those notes. And then also just to highlight again that on November 13th, we will have, West Putt is hosting the regional dinner it will be on It's with the LRIC coordinator, and it will be on AI, among other things. So anyone who is available to go to that, you can register with Denise. She will get everyone signed up. I unfortunately won't be able to attend, but I know that there are some other people on the board who will be able to make it.
So I'll be going, I think, and I'll be
I
going.
don't know who registered. I think Neil and Malcolm, both of us, yeah, so far. Join us, there's room for you.
Yeah, no, it's not that, I thought I had registered, but that's fine. If there's other dinners coming up this month, isn't there? There's like, the 18th, there's one.
18th is ribbon cutting.
18th is the ribbon cutting for the auditorium.
Yeah. I'll check the board development calendar, no worries.
That's like music to my ears.
Yeah.
Board development calendar.
So I just, on one other thing, going back to policy,
Yes,
because of the ribbon cutting,
yes.
policy committee will be meeting at 5 p.m. in the faculty conference room here rather than at the district office.
I understand.
I may say that so that members of the public know that we're not going to be in our usual time and we're not going to be in our usual place.
Right, it'll be
I think we
noticed.
have to, yeah, it's.
And it will be noticed.
It'll be noticed again, yeah.
Anyone else for polling? Item 7.4, items needed for the next Board of Education meeting. Anyone?
No. The only thing I'll say is, depending on what happens at our meeting on the 18th, we may have additional policies for the December. We'll certainly have the second reading of the ones we talked about today, except for media relations, and we will have maybe some others for first reading.
Wonderful. Item 7.5, adjournment. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby adjourns the meeting at 9:41 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Abstained?